What's up, guys? This is TheKephas. Every now and then, for one reason or another, video games becomes the topic that the world decides to discuss. So when a 13-year-old boy who recently lost his father decides to focus his attention on playing Tetris the best that he can, to the point where he plays it so well that he actually crashes the game and breaks records, this is what a random news anchor had to say.
As a mother, I would just say step away from the screen, go outside, get some fresh air. Beating Tetris is not a life goal.
Now, it may be no surprise that, like most things tend to do, this made the internet very upset. And there are probably a lot of reasons why this upset so many different people, but I want to focus on what I believe to be the core issue, which is that this anchor posits the idea that video games are a waste of time, a sentiment that has been echoed a lot throughout society.
Video games are a real problem. You do them and they're real exciting, but you don't get anywhere.
So, are video games a waste of time? Now, what's most likely happened is that everybody that's heard me ask that question has already formulated an answer to that question, and there's very little I can say that will probably ever change that answer. And so I don't want to try and change that answer for anybody. What I'd rather do is discuss the journey that I've gone on and what's led me to my own conclusion. There are three distinct things about me that most people who know me personally know about. One is that I am almost completely blind. Two is that I'm a Christian. And three is that I play video games. And it might surprise you that among those three, the one that I've been given the most grief about throughout my life is that I play video games.
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
And if I may be a bit transparent here, I'll admit that there was a time in my life where I was extremely insecure about playing video games. It's actually something that I've struggled with at different times in my life, to be honest, but especially around the time that I graduated high school. See, I had some people in my head, and they had me convinced that if I continued to play video games, then I probably wouldn't go very far in life. I probably wouldn't be very successful, most likely wouldn't get a girlfriend, they would get in the way of my walk with the Lord, man, that was one I heard a lot, and most importantly, that they would prevent me from growing up. If I continued to play video games, it was a sign that I was still immature and needed to grow up and be a man. As they put it, put away childish things. That's what I heard a lot. And it got so bad, I started to feel inferior to people around me, especially other men. So I caved and gave up my video games. I sold some, boxed up the rest, and for about a year, I didn't touch video games. That was until one day when my grandfather and I were talking on the phone, and he just randomly asked me if I had played any new video games lately. And I told him this spiel. Grandpa, I gave up video games. He asked me, why are you giving up video games? You've always liked playing them. And I told him, well, Grandpa, because it's time for me to grow up. I need to be responsible. I need to be a man and I need to be mature. And his response is something I'll never forget. He said, I think this is one of the most immature things that you've ever done. So you're going to take something that you love doing, something you've been doing your whole life, and you're going to give that up because other people say you should? I have watched you, I know you, and video games have always been a part of who you are. And if you're going to give that up and redefine yourself because of the opinion of other people, that's one of the most immature things you can ever do. I felt like he was right. I started playing games again, and I stopped caring so much about what other people thought. And by the way, that includes some random boomer news anchor on the internet. Because at the end of the day, while everyone has a right to formulate their own opinion and also to freely express that opinion, It is no one's prerogative to determine for you what is and what is not a waste of your time.
Only you can decide what's best for you, Jesse.
So what I'd like to do is share, I guess, my thought process and how I determine how I should spend my time, and hopefully offer up a bit of a thought exercise as well. And I'm going to do that by taking a look at a book in the Bible, actually, and it's the book of Ecclesiastes. I've been studying this book for a while, and I really enjoy this book. People believe, at least, it was written by King Solomon, who many regard as one of the wisest men in history. So there you go. But he's actually writing from the perspective of a teacher. And this teacher has made some observations about life. And at first glance, these observations seem very dark and a bit nihilistic. Basically, he looks at life and he realizes how short life is. And he looks at life in the context of the cosmic view of the universe and realizes how tiny we are and realizes how short our time here is. And then he kind of makes this observation that, man, it doesn't really matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter if you're a religious person who believes in God or you're an atheist. We're all going to share the same fate. It doesn't matter what we do with our time. We're going to see it end. All of us. That's the reality. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to last for very long. So he kind of made this realization. So he started to think, well, then what should we do with the time we have, right? What can we do to find meaning, as he puts it, under the sun? And the nihilistic part is that he kind of realizes that nothing, actually, because it's all meaningless.
You are all nothing!
The translation that's often given is meaningless, but the word used, like the Hebrew word, is hevel, which actually means smoke. That everything is like smoke. The more you try to define life, the harder it gets. So what the teacher tries to do, he does some exercises, he does some experiments, and he pursues different things in life. The first thing that he pursues is wealth and, to a lesser extent, success. He acquires a lot of wealth. And then he thinks about the wealth that he's acquired, and he's like, well, what was the point of all this? Think of it this way. A lot of people have made this observation that a man spends 80 years of his life acquiring wealth, and then at the end of that 80 years, he would gladly spend all of that wealth to get those years back. Wealth in and of itself isn't very fulfilling. It can certainly be helpful to have money. No one's going to deny that. We certainly all need it, but money in and of itself, for most people, is not very fulfilling. You can see a lot of wealthy people that have made similar observations. So that's the first thing. And so then he starts to pursue pleasurable things. And you could probably classify this as like the dopamine hits. The dopamine has diminishing returns. And so if you live your life just looking for the next dopamine fix, which is a problem that a lot of people have,
They just fucking lay around, you know, and then they seek refuge in drugs or video games or something that stimulates them.
eventually the things that you're spending your time on can become very meaningless because they're not offering that same sense of joy that they once did. And for a lot of people, this is the category that video games fall under because they're nothing more than a dopamine hit. And so this is where it gets kind of complicated because, you know, dopamine isn't a bad thing. Dopamine helps us pursue things that we want in our lives. I mean, every time I pick up my newborn baby and cuddle him, I get a pretty big dopamine hit. Every time I hug and kiss my wife, I get a dopamine hit. You know, every time I do something that I enjoy, there's a dopamine hit there to remind me that I probably should continue to do this thing. But the problem isn't so much that we're doing things that we enjoy, it's that we're doing things for the sole purpose for getting a fix. And there's nothing behind it, no substance, no fulfillment behind the thing that we're doing. And so that's the observation made, that living for pleasure alone is also pointless. It's also unfulfilling. And much like wealth, it's also empty. Pleasure in and of itself can lead to an unfulfilling and empty life.
So what does that mean? I can get addicted to everything so I can't enjoy anything?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it means.
Then the teacher turns his attention to self-improvement. He started to pursue things like wisdom, knowledge, and righteousness. And while he found these things to be extremely valuable and beneficial, even self-improvement has its limits, and overindulging and pursuing it in excess can lead to unfulfillment.
I feel kind of guilty taking this relaxing bath when we could be out there training.
I know, son. But you have to understand, sometimes rest is as important as training. Maybe even more important.
In conclusion, the author encourages a more balanced approach to life. Because while none of the things they pursued were inherently bad, it's just that any of them, in and of themselves, were unsuccessful at making life any more meaningful, especially when pursued excessively. The nihilistic view that life is meaningless is not what the teacher was trying to say, but rather that life in itself has no inherent meaning.
If you know everything, then what's the meaning of life?
Life has no meaning.
In other words, the meaning of your life is up to you. Only you can define yourself. Only you can determine what is and what isn't a good use of your time.
It's time you bit the bullet and started caring about something with all your heart and energy. Concentrate on what's important, Yusuke. Then commit to it all the way.
When I was 11 years old, I lost my 10-month-old sister unexpectedly 2 days after Christmas. It was one of the hardest things I had ever been through, and I spent a lot of time at home by myself dealing with the grief. I just happened to get an extra week off of school that year due to a snowstorm, and it was the same year that The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time was released for the N64. And so while I was at home dealing with everything, I popped on Zelda and just started to play. And I don't know how, but the game helped me process the grief in a much more managing way. It wasn't like I was escaping from the grief. I was dealing with it while playing the game, and something about the game giving me something to do, something to figure out, work towards, and accomplish was extremely helpful in dealing with that grief. And part of what I walked away with from that experience was that life continues to go on. There's still stuff to do in life. There's still joy to be had. And I gotta tell you, I don't consider any single moment of that time playing Zelda to be a waste of time. When I think of the lessons that I've learned, the worlds that I've explored, the stories that I've got to experience, I think of it as no less a waste of time than reading a book or watching a TV show. When I think of the friends I've made, the times I've spent playing games with my wife, with my kid, with my friends, that doesn't seem like a waste of time at all. When I think about being a content creator, sharing my love for video games and how fulfilling that is for me, that is certainly not a waste of time. For me, playing video games is more than just a dopamine hit. It provides a sense of fulfillment in my life. And that's why when I define myself as someone who plays video games, I do it now with no shame. And no one can take that away from me. But that's my story, my journey, and how I choose to define my life. So when you ask the question, are video games a waste of time? The answer is entirely up to you. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by clicking that like button. And feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. And if you'd like to see more videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you'd like, you can support my work on Patreon. Links to all that stuff can be found in the description below. This is TheKephas. Until next time.